Hey folks, Nora General Manager Tony Mazzucco coming to you with our weekly Facebook Live update for COVID and other updates. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a few minutes. We have our weekly COVID updates as well as an update on restaurant seating, and we're going to talk a little bit about Halloween too and where our health department thinks we'll be able to go for Halloween and what we think we'll be able to do. So we'll go ahead and get started in just a minute as folks log on. Hi, Catherine, and people are already getting ahead of me and they're letting me know they're here, which is great, which means we can go ahead and get started in just a minute. Happy fall, everyone. We are going to go ahead and jump right into our COVID numbers. So there's good news and bad news again this week. The good news is that, well, the bad news is we're still in yellow. The good news is we're still in yellow. We obviously would like to see us in green with the numbers trending down. They did trend up again this week, but we're at about 6.6 cases per 100,000. Last week we were at 5.2, but we were at 6.4 the week before that. So we seem to be hovering around a standard level of around 6 cases per 100,000. Our total case count is 672. I believe I'm number 2 in that case count. Or I may have been number 6, I forget sometimes. So the overall case count isn't increasing dramatically. We have had 28 positive cases in the last 14 days. We are still seeing generally mild cases. We've seen the average age tick down a little bit. It's still at just about 55. And again, we're seeing mild cases. The total test number for Norwood is 13,297 as of yesterday. In the last 14 days, we've had 2,000 tests. So consistently, we seem to be averaging the equivalent of at least 100 tests a day for Norwood residents, which is a good number. Our percent positive rate is 1.68%. Which is a little bit better than last week. So that's one of those funny anecdotes about the data, that it's sort of the percent positive rate, which is the percent of people tested who are positive, can fluctuate up or down, and the case count can go up or down. Hey, Kate. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining us this week. So that 1.68% number is important, though, because even if the case count goes up, and that's the percent positive rate, we still know that there's this sort of same level of spread in the community, or lack of a level of spread in the community. And that's important for getting an idea of how widespread COVID is in Norwood or any other community. And as we always say, it's tough to always look at these on a town-by-town basis, because the border between Norwood and Westwood or Walpole or Canton is really a made-up line. The virus doesn't pay attention to where the lines are, so it's just how we gather our statistics. But it's interesting that we continue to hover around that 1.67 or so percent positive rate for our COVID numbers. So overall, I take that as a good sign. We're still in the yellow. We could just as easily end up in the red if we have a case count go up. We get a handful more cases in a few weeks. Dedham has come down from red into yellow, but what's interesting is Walpole, Canton, and Stoughton, as well as Westwood, have all sort of jumped up into yellow. So they're now seeing levels where we are. My understanding is there's nothing that they're able to trace it to specifically, just as we're not able to. Our numbers still seem to come from folks who are, or generally have always been essential workers and work in situations where they are in regular close contact with people. We're not seeing, we're seeing the parties, of course, so we're not seeing general community spread. We're not seeing any cases positive where we can't trace where it's coming from. And what's interesting now that you're seeing is usually, because there's sort of that family spread where one household member tests positive and then it ends up affecting the rest of the household, that sort of ends up being, people almost know what's coming. It's, mom tested positive. Well, chances are dad and Billy and Susie might end up testing positive as well. Other than an extended day case, we haven't had any school cases yet. That could always change. Some of the towns on the South Shore had either teachers or students test positive. Scituate, Hull, and I think Hingham did. So that's, that happens. It's going to eventually happen. School districts have plans in place for when that does happen, just as we've talked about what school protocols are, what business protocols are. So inevitably it will happen. Interestingly enough, Medfield and Holliston, Medfield has gone into the yellow as well, and as well as Westwood, and Holliston is in the red. So what's a little interesting about that is you are seeing sort of a case count increase in some of the wealthier and somewhat more rural communities where you typically hadn't seen that before. Question from Cindy. I saw some women doing yoga on the baseball field on Pleasant Street near Allen Road. How to join them? Can't tell if it's a public thing or what. Cindy, do me a favor. Send an email to the rec department. It's not likely a recreation program, but we have for the summer and the fall been leasing out at no cost space to different fitness studios in town if they want to use our different fields for outdoor fitness. It could just be a group of folks who are interested in doing it. But just shoot an email, or you can always email us at managers@norwoodma.gov. We'll forward it to the rec department. They'll find out likely who it is. The rec department, incidentally, does have their yoga in the building. I believe this Friday night at 6 o'clock is gentle yoga. I'm trying to decide between that and going to see Jurassic Park up at Mercer. So, jumping back to our COVID numbers, it's interesting that you're seeing some of these smaller communities, not the tiny communities out in Western Mass, but the Medfields of the world and the Hollistons, where their numbers are going up. They seem to have a small little cluster, and it throws them up into yellow or to red. You're still seeing the same general demographic trend that you've seen. Braintree is now in yellow. It's too early to have any of this associated with any return to schools, although we know colleges have gone back in some places. To my knowledge, there's no colleges in Medfield, Walpole, Canton. I think you're just seeing as general people are returning from vacation, they're returning from trips down the Cape, and society is busier. I don't know about everyone else, but we are seeing more, at least when I'm out there, traffic seems to be closer to normal. People are starting to dine indoors. So there's a lot of just humans out there being humans. And that, of course, leads to spread. But none of these numbers as of yet are substantial or a concern. The state may have set their green, red, yellow bar very low. Maybe it was intentionally. So we'll have to watch how they adjust those numbers going forward. But it's another year for us in the, another week rather for us in the yellow. We have been talking with the school department, and some towns have different protocols for when they go to red. The state's now recommending, and we would probably agree with it, that you wait a 2 to 3 week period, depending on your data, once you'd be in the red, to make any decisions about whether you change your protocols or whether you go to all remote learning in the case of the schools, or whether we would go to shutting down the civic or the library. We would look at the data and really need to see where it is. We would want to make sure it's not just a cluster, and that's what happened in not Walpole. That's what happened in Rentham, where they had a nursing home that threw them to go into red, but none of their other numbers changed. If we saw that here, we wouldn't necessarily make a change. If we saw an increase, we'd want to look at the percent positive rate. We want to look at, if it wasn't a cluster, was it one household where 6 people ended up testing positive? So as our numbers tend to go up and down, there's no definitive trigger that this number means this and this number means that. We would look at those numbers and make a decision based on the data and what we're seeing and what's in the best interest of safety and keeping things moving forward. I am going to talk briefly about restaurants. The governor did issue a change to his executive orders. Leanne, question on the nursing home in Rentham. I haven't heard any more on that particular nursing home. The challenge is with any nursing home, once something starts spreading, you got to get, and it happened here in Norwood, and luckily we have been good with nursing home cases, knock on wood, the last few months after some terribly tragic cases back in March and April. When you think about the nature of a very susceptible population, so people generally in their 80s and their 90s, a lot of them are already in poor health, have a lot of underlying conditions, and then the nature that you're working on feeding somebody or working on bathing somebody or taking care of them, it's unfortunate that it seems, keeping COVID out of a nursing home seems to be not only a challenge, but imperative, because once it gets in, it's going to spread pretty easily. But Rentham's numbers, they are slowly starting to come down. They had that spike as a result of the nursing home. It doesn't appear that there's continuing spread in that nursing home. Nursing homes are just very difficult. One of the things to control it, one of the things we realized through this, and remember, nursing homes are regulated or inspected by the state. They're not done at the local level. They report to the Department of Public Health and not the local boards of health. But you have a lot of sharing of staff between nursing homes. And somebody may work as a CNA or even a nurse or maintenance work or something at 1 or 2 or even 3 different facilities. They may pick up a shift here, a shift there. And what might be great for employees to pick up additional shifts and have flexibility, it might work for the employers, ends up being absolutely devastating for something like COVID. If you have an employee who tests positive and they've been in 3 different nursing homes and had access to 70% of the patients in all those nursing homes, you have the potential of something wreaking havoc. It's also the ultimate example of where we need to be careful, because you may test positive for COVID, you may not really have any symptoms, you may feel fine, but somebody working in a nursing home now has the possibility to transmit that to an incredibly susceptible population where lives are going to be lost. So nursing homes continue to be a challenge for all of us. Before I get into Halloween, which I know everyone wants to talk about, restaurants, the governor issued a new order. and the restaurant seating has been increased from 6 to a table to 10 to a table. I don't really know if that was necessary, but neither here nor there. And they're allowing bar seating. However, you still have to practice social distancing, and I want to explain that and explain why, because some people don't understand. Well, what's the difference between a bar and a restaurant, and why the state is doing it that way, and what we're focusing on for enforcement. The provision of food is required under the state's rules. That's not really to prevent COVID. Eating a cheeseburger with your cocktail is not going to make you more or less susceptible to COVID. When you think of your typical bar, like a party, a bunch of people around, and you're going from place to place, and you're all jammed up, and then you're going up to the bar, and then I'm going up to the bar, and especially when you live in a town and you work in that town and you know people, you're going to move around a lot. That's a lot of people in a short period of space. When you're drinking, you're talking louder, you're pushing more droplets out, and it's the kind of environment. I mean, it's a party in an enclosed place is sort of what it is. And you may not talk to most of the people in the bar, but you've got your little group. Usually families don't go to the bar necessarily. Sometimes you get mom and dad might go, but it's rarely mom and dad and the kids. And yes, sometimes you might have older kids and you go, but it's not like a family house party where it's everyone coming there. So if there's 6 or 7 people meeting at the bar, it's usually single people, couples from different areas and everything else. Thank you, Michelle. I actually got this mug at Shaw's. I do like it. It's a nice happy pumpkin mug. So there's a lot of spread. I actually have a picture on my phone. I had gone to a bar in town. I think it was Limey's back in January. It was just an ordinary picture. It was pretty busy in there, but it looked like any other bar when college students were sort of home, and a lot of people in their 20s and 30s there. I mean, there had to be, I don't know, 60, 70 people in there. That was totally normal for all of us up until COVID hit. But you look at a picture like that and you say, this is how things can spread. I was looking through pictures recently of events at the senior center where we had tables of 8 or 10, and you had tons and tons of people at each table, and people up on the dance floor and people in line. You just say, wow, this is how these things end up spreading. So the bar seating is, I think, a good addition or a good adjustment. You'll be seated at a bar. What we're focusing with our restaurants on is making sure that if you get seated at a bar, you're seated at a bar and served by a waitress or a waiter or bartender, and then there needs to be space between you and someone else. It needs to be that 6-foot social distancing. Don't go up to the bar and order a drink. There's supposed to be table service anywhere you go. I know it's a big thing in the club, right? You have table service. Well, now you have table service everywhere. So a waiter or waitress needs to be bringing you your drinks and food. If you are at the bar, you'll get seated there. We do know a lot of our bars, restaurant type bars, they lost some seating by not having people able to sit at the bar, and we're hoping that it'll help some of our restaurants keep going. So there's an increase in the number of people at the table, not the overall facility, and you still need to maintain distance and have barriers. People can be seated at a bar now. There still needs to be 6 feet in between people, and don't be getting up and jumping and running and going around. And if you're at a table and you want that other drink and you see the bartender behind the bar and you get up and go to the bar, you're not supposed to be doing that. And don't necessarily think about yourselves and the people you're with. I mean, I hope you do, but think about that business, because the state is doing enhanced enforcement in cities and towns where they jump into the red and where they have an issue. And the ABCC, or the State's Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission, is also doing enhanced enforcement. So the last thing you would want is your favorite bar or restaurant to get into any trouble and face a fine or a license shutdown because patrons were sort of misbehaving and not following the rules. So overall, I think it's a good thing. I think if you look at our percent positive rate and where we are, these numbers might just be indicative of the new normal in terms of there's always some point of infectious disease in the community, communicable diseases in the community. There's always something there, and this may be where that level is. We don't want it to grow too much. In that percent positive rate, and I was looking at some numbers for percent positive rates back in April, sort of at the peak of things, and they were much, much higher what was coming out. So it's come down. It is high in some communities. It's as much as 4 or 5%, but anything under that is really just 5 out of 100 people are going to be positive based on the testing. So we want to keep it low. We want to keep it slow, and we want to keep businesses going. So positive news on restaurants. Bars, as we know them, are not open yet, but if you like going and just sitting at a bar and having a drink, by all means, that will be allowed actually as of September 28th. I don't want anyone to think that it's right away, but you can do it as of September 28th. So Halloween. We've been getting a lot of questions about Halloween, and I'm going to talk about it because our command team has met and sort of looked over the guidelines and come up with some regulations, at least enough that we can share um, verbally. We're working on trying to put it in writing, but two big caveats. One, we are still waiting for state guidance. The CDC has released their guidance or their opinions on risky activities. We're waiting for the state to come out with more formal um, uh, without more formal guidance from the state. That could come out and change what we're putting out. And our numbers right now are in the yellow. If we were to have a consistent increase in numbers, that may change what we're advising for Halloween. Question from Debbie. There's some bars that are serving alcohol without requiring food to be ordered. I won't name the places, but assuming this is not legal, right? So they have to have food available. You're supposed to order food with your alcoholic beverage. The natural flow of any place is that some restaurants maybe, and I've seen it in town, some places are a little bit more stricter with it. It depends on how you interpret the state law. They need to have some food available. If you're ever somewhere and there's no food available, they're not following the rules because it needs to be a restaurant. Some places are trying to be accommodating of somebody who wants to order a drink and then have their food a little bit afterwards. I, on a personal level, am like that. I can't really drink and eat at the same time, so I might like to sit for half an hour and order a drink, and then order my food a half an hour after that. So they have to have food available, and you're supposed to order food with your drink. I think a restaurant, some of them will get concerned where you say, okay, well, there's four of us, we're all going to have a drink, and we're all going to order food, and then you don't order food. But remember that the ordering of the food isn't really just, I mean, it's to separate a restaurant from a bar, but the risk of COVID spreading if, the four of you and I go into a bar and we all sit down and have two drinks and then leave versus all of us going in there and having two drinks and cheeseburgers or whatever we have and leaving, there's no difference on the rate of COVID spread. What the focus is people have to be seated at tables. They have to be served by a waitress, and they don't want them getting up and going. So the consumption of just alcohol tends to lead to, again, when you're drinking, just like anyone who's been through a tips class, or you tend to be a little bit louder, you tend to get a little bit closer to people, you tend to be a little bit more friendly, you tend to make multiple trips to the bathroom, and all of those different things, as well as the people jamming together and having a drink and being a little bit more friendly. That's what's increasing the spread. So um, that's what we're trying to achieve. So just that somebody sitting there having a drink versus having a drink and a burger, the food doesn't have any impact on COVID. We're just trying to prevent the spreading. Great suggestion from Denise. You can order your food and request the server not put it in right away. That's always an option. Um, it's up to anyone to decide how they go about doing it. The restaurants just need to have food available. But even again, even if they didn't have food available, which they're required to, that's the rule. It's really about making sure you're sat at a table and somebody's coming up and serving you, as well as maintaining the social distancing. That's a big concern there. That are you generally the 6 feet or a few feet away? You're supposed to be 6 feet. Are you generally separated from people? And again, when you think of a bar where people are maybe ordering food early on, but later on are just drinking, there's just a lot of mingling, and it's a lot of people coming from different places and going into one place, and that's what the concern is. I'll take a question from Colin before I go on to Halloween. Husband and I walked through the town in the downtown area. Keeping asks, is there a reason why most of the walk signals turn so quickly to the stop caution hand signal? The main reason is if you look at the overall traffic flow and the amount of time it generally takes somebody to cross the street and how often somebody needs to cross the street versus how many cars go pre-COVID, it generally works. We can always look at whether or not we can extend that amount of time. But what we'll find when we do traffic studies is for every time somebody hits the button and waits, and I'll admit I'm guilty of this, there are people who hit the button and then they kind of look around and they say, well, nobody's here, and then they skip across the street. And then 2 minutes later, when it does click, you're stopping traffic and there's nobody going. Those signals are still an electronic system like everything else. I'll have engineering take a look at them and make sure that the timing is still right, and we'll take a look at it. But generally, it's meant to just sort of cross the street quickly and to allow traffic to flow, because as traffic tends to pull back up more and more, you can run into much bigger traffic problems. I always remind everyone that if you think of traffic like your arteries, it's always going everywhere all at once. So if you stop longer here on this street for somebody to cross and it's backing up traffic here, it starts to cause issues all throughout the whole system. I'll admit they're a little on the quick side, but we'll take a look and make sure that they're where they should be. I sometimes have been looking down at my phone or off looking at a distance somewhere because I spent a lot of time this summer walking around downtown as well. And then before I know it, I get the hand already up telling me not to go. But we can definitely take a look at them. So on to Halloween, here's what we've come up with for Halloween. We're advising folks not to have any parties, not to have any haunted houses. Those are, again, whether it's a Halloween party or a Thanksgiving party or a Labor Day party, parties are where there tend to be a lot of spread. Some people like to have like an open house on Halloween. We're advising generally against that. We can't stop people from having a few folks over for Halloween, but again, parties are where things tend to spread. So we're advising against parties in haunted houses. Trick or treating, we feel, can be done in a safe manner. Now, the CDC did say it's a high risk activity. I wouldn't say we disagree with the CDC, but like any activity you undertake, it's about how you go about doing it. So here's the advice for trick or treating. First of all, remember, if you don't want to participate in trick or treating, don't participate. You don't need to go out if you don't want to. And if you don't want people coming to your house, you just turn your lights off, your front lights off, like I think we've all done. It's like the biggest sort of unspoken rule in America. If you don't want to participate in Halloween, you just sort of have your front lights shut off. If you do, you put your lights on and you have your decorations up. Masks are important, and I know everyone's going to say, but everyone wears a Halloween mask. Halloween masks are not the same as a mask preventing COVID. I actually was going to dig my one of my Halloween masks out and put it on and show you. So don't rely on that general Halloween mask. Even if somebody's going to come up and say, well, my mask is made of A, B, and C, and there's only a little slot, please just follow the rules and wear a mask for both the host and the trick-or-treaters. So, and if you are a host and you want people to be able to come to your house, you like it every year, please wear a mask. And remember, it's sort of trick-or-treating 101. Kids should open their bag, place the items in the bag, make sure you've washed your hands. When you get home, wash your hands before you open up any candy. It's really no different than taking any candy from the grocery store or anywhere else. If you don't feel safe, don't participate. If you feel safe and you can do it safely, there should be no risk if everyone follows the rules. We're also advising, Eddie, there's really no reason to quarantine candy for 5 to 6 days. The surface spread of COVID is absolutely minimal. We all, I think, grew up with stories of candy being tainted with this or that, and I don't know if any of those were ever true or they were urban legends. I mean, use your best judgment. If you generally wash your hands, you can maybe wipe it down, or you can hold on to it for a day. It's not the worst thing in the world. 5 to 6 days really isn't anything that the science is going to say. If you're going to quarantine candy for 5 to 6 days, you need to quarantine your groceries for 5 to 6 days. And what we've consistently found is that for COVID to spread on a surface, and it's not that we don't want to have high-touch surfaces cleaned regularly, you have to have some pretty strong droplets or bodily fluids hit something, and then you need to quickly be touching it and then getting that into your orifices. Now, as I told everyone here, I'm terrible with touching my face, so I may be the poster child of somebody who doesn't follow that. Question from Doris, Halloween gift bags, put candy and blue non-edible items in them. When I see the kids coming, plan to count them, put out the number of gift bags, and shut the door again. That's not a bad idea. What you want to avoid is putting out a whole bowl of candy, because then you've got one person touching all of the candy. If you as a host are being conscious and your hands are clean, you should be fine. We're also advising people, I know you like to sometimes go with other groups. Don't necessarily go with other groups, because again, it's, more activity and more spreading. Now, sometimes it's tough. You have a little kid, they like to go with their cousin or their friend down the street, but try to keep the groups to a minimum. And here's another thing that we would have never advised in the past, but it makes sense. If you're not feeling well, don't participate in Halloween. Even though the potential risk of spread is minimal, if you're wearing a mask, kids are just coming up and opening their bag and they're getting a piece of candy, or they're taking a piece of candy, even though that might be minimal, remember, it's one of those things, if you don't feel well, don't participate. I remember being a kid and being very young and being adamant that I put my Ninja Turtles costume on and go trick-or-treating, being sick one year. I was around 7 or 8 years old. In hindsight, at the time we probably said, well, it's really about whether the kid should be out doing it while they're sick. But if you're not feeling well, and I know it's tough if you get a little kid, if they're not feeling well, you shouldn't be going out trick-or-treating. That's where the risk comes from. But it's no different than anywhere else. If you're feeling sick, you probably shouldn't go bowling. If you're feeling sick, you shouldn't go to that takeout restaurant and talk to the cooks or talk to the people at the counter and get that takeout. So just be smart. Again, don't do it if you doesn't feel safe. If you don't want to participate, don't participate. Please wear masks. Halloween masks don't count. Um, the hosts need to have masks, clean hands, and open your bag, drop the candy in. Or if you want to do a pickup, we recommend it be, as Doris said, um, something where people can kind of uh, just pick one up per group. You don't want to put a bunch of things in there, and then you know how kids are. And I'll be honest with you, when I was 8 or 9 years old, I would have looked at that bowl and tried to grab as big of a handful as I could. Try not to mix families. And again, please be safe. If you are sick, please stay home. Plain and simple. If your kids are sick, please stay home. We know it's tough. They may forget. They may not want to miss Halloween. I don't know if the kids are young enough. You can just tell them it's a different day, or hope they forget about it. But yeah, I know, Katie. Halloween masks don't count as masks. Sorry. And I'm sure I'm going to get an email from somebody that's going to say, "Well, Tony, here's why you're wrong because my specialty made mask is made of this and that and the other." Please just follow the rules and wear a mask. We'd like to have a safe Halloween. We think this can be done safely if everyone follows the rules and does it. I do want to put the big caveat on everything I just said, and we're trying to work this into sort of some written guidance, but we're waiting on state guidance. The state might come out and say, do or don't do this, and then we would, of course, have to follow what the Commonwealth tells us. And it's based on looking at things right now where our numbers are. 30 days from now, things could be very different. And Halloween, I believe, is 37 days away or so. The world could be a very different place. Our numbers could be through the roof. Our numbers could be where they are. Our numbers could be lower, and we could all be forgetting about it. But we think it's possible to have a safe Halloween if we just please follow rules and be safe. Stay home when you're sick. Stay home when you're sick. There was a story about somebody in a school somewhere testing positive for COVID and going to school. I mean, when you do stupid things like that, this is why we can't have nice things. So if everyone is safe, again, we feel that you can do trick-or-treating safely. If you do not want to participate both as a trick-or-treater or as a host, simply do not participate. There's never a requirement. Nobody has to go trick-or-treating. Nobody has to participate. Don't do it if it doesn't feel safe. Wear masks, both you as a host and you as a trick-or-treater. Wear your masks, regular hand washing, give things up. What will come out first, the state's Halloween guidance or the state's budget? Probably neither, Julie. The state will wait until everyone's made a decision, and then they will just come out and say whatever they want to say, and then they will have no guidance. We're preparing a budget, assuming the state budget is just flat level funded aid because they can't seem to do it. I wish I could just not do a budget and be like, yeah, we don't have one. Let's just see what happens. But the Commonwealth gets away with it. There are constant questions being asked of them. But we also never get an advance notice of when things are coming out. The restaurant guidelines hadn't been talked about. Nobody knew about it. And then one day we get a text, hey, the governor made a change to the restaurant guidelines. So the short answer is we actually never know. My guess is the Halloween guidelines will come out sometime in November, and then, you know, the budget guidelines will come up as we're finishing next year's budget. I couldn't tell you. But it's certainly a fair question to ask. So with that, and mind you that things can always change. We are waiting on state guidelines. We are waiting. Again, everything is contingent on where our numbers are at any given time. But we feel confident we can do a safe Halloween. If you don't feel safe, please do not participate. Please, no parties, no haunted houses. By all means, decorate. I mean, sometimes that's something that you can do. I always encourage everyone to decorate. And of course, I'm terrible. I never actually decorate because I'm probably a little too lazy to do it. But you can always decorate. There are safe ways to participate. The rec department is hard at work on their different Halloween programs and seeing what they can do. They have a plan for a trunk or treat that'll be a little bit different than it normally is, but again, done in a safe way. Please, as always, wear masks, wash hands, and don't go out when you're sick. Any other questions for Halloween, feel free to let us know, but it is ever evolving. We're waiting on the state, which may or may not ever come, and our COVID numbers could change where we are and what we advise for Halloween. We every year at Town Hall do a little Halloween party and costume contest. We're changing that up this year. We're not going to do our little Halloween party where everyone kind of gets together in the lunch hour and swaps treats and eats stuff. So those of you who do things at work, or maybe a PTA does something, I know some of the, I want to say I went to the Prescott last year. They did an awesome Halloween. They all did like an awesome haunted house. We're not going to be able to do things like that this year, but maybe you find a way to be able to do things a little bit differently than you do. You know, you can take pictures of your costumes, post them online. Maybe different streets can try to decorate themselves, and you can drive by and see, you know, which street is the best decorated. So there's ways to do things safely. But feel free to ask us, email us any questions you have about Halloween, with the understanding that it's sort of an ever-evolving prospect. Dollar Tree has a lot of great Halloween decorations, by the way. My mug here, I think I did get at Shaw's, but a couple of other announcements. We have um, hazardous household hazardous waste day is Saturday. It's one of everyone's favorite days of the year. We'll get the information posted here. It will be at the landfill. Please try to wear your masks. I think you have to wear your masks. Staff will be wearing masks to the best of their ability. We do occasionally get questions about sometimes people go to the landfill and they see somebody not wearing a mask. Remember, it is tough for folks who are always sort of transitioning from hard manual labor into running up to a car and helping somebody and running back. So they're supposed generally folks should be wearing masks, but understand that sometimes the nature of what they're doing changes fairly rapidly. If you're wearing your mask, which we ask that you do, generally things should be safe for everyone. But Household Hazardous Waste Day is the 26th at the landfill, and everyone looks forward to that year. Kudos to the DPW and the health department for, again, being able to do that and being mindful of COVID and making sure we're bringing as many of these functions as we can to the community in a safe manner. We have I want to talk for a minute about a micro grant program that we have, and we'll see if we can get the information posted here. We did a small business grant program earlier in the year that was sort of directly funded from the town through CDBG grant funds. The planning department was able to secure grant funds from the state for a micro enterprise program. So it's a program for small businesses, very small businesses, modeled on the program we did earlier. I believe the deadline to apply is tomorrow. It's micro enterprises, so very small businesses. We did get a question about whether restaurants could apply to that. The answer is absolutely, as long as they meet the guidelines. Our last program that we did internally, and this, of course, is being handled externally, but the town's last program, we had some restaurants, we had some sort of service businesses, we had barbershop type thing, a lot of different things. Information for Hazardous Household Waste Day is there on the 26th. Join us. So our micro enterprise grant program, if you know anyone, there's, I believe, a day left. It's being handled through, I believe, MAPC. Kudos to the planning department for getting those funds and being able to distribute them. We do have a farmers market coming. It is once again, the Oakdale Farms pop-up farmers market being held at the senior center. We'll get that information in the comments as well. It was very successful last time they did that. We're looking forward to having them back again. It has been put out on our social media platforms, and we are hopeful to continue to do that. That may be a good model going forward for a farmers market. I heard it was very successful. The library will be open Saturdays for browsing from 9:30 to 12:30 in the morning, and for curbside from 1:40 to 4:30 in the afternoon. I do want to apologize. I had moved my room around here, but in full defense of the library, my book is overdue. I am sorry. I will get it back through the departmental mail. It's actually even worse for me. All I have to do is remember to bring it into the office, and I put it in the library's box in the office, and they get it. So I'm sorry, Kate. The book is here. I will return it. I'm late, but the library is open Saturday, 9:30 to 12:30 for browsing in the morning, and curbside service from 1:40 to 4:30 in the afternoon. Please take advantage of the library. Please try to remember to return your books on time, but that's okay if you don't, because we all are human and we all forget to return our books on time. But library services are available, and they're working on expanding a lot of their services as well. The library police are coming for me. They are going to come for me. I'm going to see a deduction on my paycheck next week for my my library fines. Cindy comment, the library curbside is awesome executed, by the way. I agree. They've done a great job, both with the in-person browsing and with the curbside pickup. We've been able to get a lot of materials out there to a lot of people. I think there's some towns out there that still haven't really opened their libraries. I know some folks that work at libraries that still aren't going back to work. So we're happy that we're able to provide these services. And I think it's an indication of the community being safe and following the rules, that Norwood has done so many things and done a lot of things. And, our rate, given our demographics, is actually not really that bad. Now, I could be here in a couple of weeks saying, all right, guys, we're in the red and here's why. But a 1.68% positive rate when there are communities out there with 3, 4, and 5% goes to show we're generally following the rules and doing things safely, and we can do these things safely. If we can maintain a 1.5%, 2%, 2.5% positivity rate with all the different services that are out there, it means good things for Norwood and good things for the community as a whole. The rec has started some of their programming again. I did mention yoga this Friday night, gentle yoga. I highly encourage it if you're able to do it. I believe Friday night's movie is sold out, but there will be several more drive-in movies that the rec department is doing. and we're continuing a number of services everywhere. We did mention Town Hall is open by appointment only, so we just ask that you call ahead and try to make an appointment and see if we can take care of your service ahead of time. It's a particularly tough building to manage in a COVID environment. Most folks have been able to get their services digitally or online, and we're happy about that. We're actually exploring in the next year or two. There's some automated machines out there where you could pay a town bill at like the equivalent of an ATM machine. We would like to see if we could put them somewhere in a store that's open 12, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, maybe a grocery store or a pharmacy. That way, if you did absolutely have to pay a bill in cash, which you can always write a check or a money order and mail it in, you'd be able to do that at any different time, at really any time of the day. Could the town consider doing a curbside swap across town for one weekend with other communities? Planning a free curbside swap across the town. Do you mean like a mini yard sale, like you put your stuff out and people kind of come and look at stuff? It sounds like an interesting idea. I actually would like to do more like tire amnesties and different pickup programs, but they end up costing a fortune. And for some reason, we've done a mattress program as an example for a couple of years where we got a grant funding that people could bring mattresses to the landfill. And it was great because you're getting all that stuff out, you're getting it out of homes, it's not piling up, it's not a safety hazard, not a health hazard. And then there comes a point where you're doing so many and you start saying, well, wait a minute here. There's no way, 27% of Norwood is replacing a mattress every year. But Colin, that sounds like an interesting idea. Go ahead and shoot us an email and we'll see if we can see if there's something we could work up. I know we're working on getting a swap shed up at the landfill. Oh, okay, yes, except everything is free. We are working on getting a swap shed up at the landfill. There is an outfit out of, I believe, Walpole that does furniture for folks in need. And pre-COVID, because of course COVID has complicated the entire world, we talked about working about if we'd have sort of a furniture drop-off day where folks could bring their furniture somewhere and or they could sign up and they would pick up a whole bunch of furniture and we'd do some sort of a triaging. We were starting to work towards something like that, but it ended up being just a COVID kind of threw it aside, but certainly something we could end up working on. And just a comment from Kate, many thanks to everyone at the library for all their hard work. Yes, we do thank all the library employees for everything they do in keeping services up and running. This was my Indian food order earlier. I tried Norwood Spice, which is the new Indian and Nepalese restaurant in town. I highly recommend it. As I was looking at my notes and I'm saying I've got to update everyone on garlic naan. Oh, okay, no. I mentioned Household Hazardous Waste Day, the Farmers Market, which is the Oakdale Farms pop-up market, and the micro grant program. And word from the rec department, Jurassic Park is not yet sold out, so you can still get tickets to Jurassic Park if you want to from the rec department. 20 spots left for that. So I'm gonna we're at about the 40-minute mark. I'm gonna review a couple of things, and then as always, we'll take questions. We're still in the yellow in terms of our COVID numbers. We have a 6.6 per 100,000 rate. That is up from last week, but roughly where we were 2 weeks ago. And Dedham has gone into the yellow, which is good. They've dropped down, but Walpole, Canton, Stoughton, Medfield, and have all jumped into the yellow. Holliston has jumped into the red, so there's some smaller towns popping up into the red. Restaurants have expanded seating or allowed to expand seating up to 10 to a table, and you can now sit at a bar. You are still required to order food. You are still required to maintain distancing. So if a couple sits at a bar, you're supposed to sit at that bar, and there needs to be 6 feet between you and someone else. Or they could put up barriers that would be a little awkward to do on the bar. But that begins on the 28th. Halloween, as of right now, we're advising there's no Halloween can go forward. Not that we can necessarily say it wouldn't go forward. We're asking no parties, no haunted houses. If you're going to participate in trick-or-treating, we ask that you please wear a mask, both the host and the trick-or-treater. Try to keep it just to your family. Try to make sure you're not doing it if you're not feeling well. So I know you might say, oh, I have a cold, I don't feel well, let me stay home tonight and hand out candy. Just shut your light off and don't do that. If you don't feel safe, don't do it. Wear masks. Yes, you got to wear masks. It's Halloween. Wear your COVID mask, if you will, as well as your Halloween mask. And we ask that the hosts wear masks. Make sure your hands are clean. And try not to mix families. Kids need to open the bag, you drop it in. So we do believe that Halloween or that trick-or-treating can be done safely. And you can always look to just decorate your home and other things. Please, no parties, no haunted houses, stuff like that. Household Hazardous Waste Day is the 26th. We have the Oakdale Farms pop-up market. That's on our social media. Our micro grant program closes tomorrow for businesses, and there are still spots available at the rec department for Jurassic Park for tomorrow night. There's also gentle yoga tomorrow night if you want to sign up for that. And the library is open Saturdays for in-person browsing, 9:30 to 12:30, and then 1:40 to 4:30 for curbside pickup. With that, that is the end of this week's updates and informations. I'd be happy to take any questions that folks have, and if not, you can always email us at managers@norwoodma.gov, or you can email the respective department, but we don't mind trying to forward anything to you. And Cullen, as I said, if you can email me an example of that program, we'll see if we can do some sort of a curbside swap, or I don't know, townwide yard giveaway swap or something. That actually sounds like an interesting idea. Could cause some traffic jams, but maybe you could pick up some good stuff there. All right, looks like we might end a little bit early today if there are no questions. Everyone, please stay healthy out there. Household Hazardous Waste Day is Saturday. The 150th Anniversary Committee is meeting tonight at 7 o'clock. I don't know if we have that information out there. It's just a committee meeting, but if you're interested, you can always let us know. There'll be a lot of fun things coming from that. We are looking with the 150th for different groups if they want to get involved. So if you're a Little League team, or you're a restaurant, or your business, you can let us know if you're interested. We want a lot of different groups to just host sort of their own events, all under the guise of the 150th, coming up in just about 2 years. And with that, I think I'll close. One more comment. Just kudos to teachers and administrators at Norwood Public Schools, as schools have started to go back in and they've been dealing with remote learning. It's been a little bit crazy, but I think they've done great. A question from John: anything about the hospital? Nothing new to really report on the hospital. They're finalizing their insurance process and still looking at how to get a temporary ED or ER up and running. Doesn't look like it's likely to happen anytime soon, given the complexity of if they find an off-site place to do one, they won't be able to have the cath lab. If they do one at the hospital, they'd have to construct sort of an outside utility plant just to serve it and somehow keep that running while the rest of the facility goes under construction. So the building, unfortunately, just suffered a substantial amount of damage, and the utilities are just shot. So no update. I know that we're in touch with them a couple times a week. The inspectors are in touch with them regularly. And after the end of this month, I know they'll be waiting on their final short of insurance determination, which determines where they're going to go and how big of a project they're going to undertake and what they can do in the short term. We are working with them on setting up a temporary COVID testing clinic. So we'd like to be able to get that up to running in the next month or so that we'd have some consistent testing in town, right somewhere probably on the hospital campus. You can get testing through urgent care, through your primary care, and through other places, but it'd be nice to have one there just full-time, just convenient for everyone. But we're working on partnering on them with that. So with that, other than kudos to our teachers and administrators for getting schools up and running under a hybrid model, which has not been easy, I will leave everyone with that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us in the comments, or you can always email us at managers@norwoodma.gov, and we will get back to you. Comment from Michelle. Yeah, free end of the driveway. Drive around town, take a look for items they want to take. I think that sounds like a really cool idea. Maybe we can work on putting something together. We'll kick it to the DPW and see if that's something that we could do. Maybe we do it right before Christmas, and you pick up some Christmas presents for people. I don't know if people would want used furniture for Christmas presents, but I'd certainly take some. All right, that's a great idea. With that, everyone, I hope everyone has a great weekend. The weather is supposed to be nice, and you can please, by all means. Oh, wait, one more announcement. See, I go to end early, and then we end up having a lot of announcements. Norwood Food Service. Again, kudos to all of our food service workers who have continued to work every single day of the pandemic. So while a lot of us had the privilege of being able to go home, our food service workers have been there every single day, day in and day out at Norwood, taking care of our students. And the message from Diane is, for Norwood families that have school-age children, the USDA did expand their waiver for all students nationwide, K through 12, and any siblings, to receive free school meals, both breakfast and lunch, both in school and during remote learning times. It extends the end of December. It doesn't take away any meals. It actually helps the meal program. We get reimbursed for it. And again, that is always school-age children, so that's not just kids in the Norwood Public Schools. If you go to St. Catherine's, if you're homeschooled, you go to a charter school, by all means, please take advantage of the program. I may have information in the next week or two about bringing back our weekly family meal program for November and December. We're not sure if we can. We're working on it. But thank you, Diane, and thank you to all of our food service workers and what they do for us every single week. We'll make sure we get that information out on our social media as well. Question from Leanne, could they use the former urgent care as an ER? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is they wouldn't be able in a reasonable amount of time or in a reasonably efficient way put the cath lab there. And that's one of the things that we're really missing is that's what you treat when somebody starts having a heart attack. That's what they need to be able to take them to. So somebody in Westwood or Norwood has a heart attack, they're getting driven into Boston. By the time you get the cath lab sort of set up at that at a temporary site, whether it was the former urgent care or you could put it in a strip mall somewhere, that's sort of the problem that they would face is whether they would have those services that they need. The other item is beds generally ends up being a problem, but that could probably be surmounted. It's just not having the truly critical life-saving services that they need. Again, the cath lab being one of them. The region lost its cath lab, so when you have a heart attack now in the area, it's a concern about traveling into Boston versus being able to travel to Norwood. I know that's one of the options that they're looking at is whether they could set up a temporary ER. It's just about whether you could have the services that would actually make a difference in saving somebody's life there. We wouldn't want to set one up and it's just, well, I'm sort of sick and that might be something that urgent care can take care of. It's really about those sort of class 1 emergencies that come up that we want to be able to handle. It's tough to do those understandably on a temporary basis, but it's a great suggestion and I know it's something that the hospital's looking at and we're looking at, and we wish we could just set a tent up and do an ER and make a MASH unit, but unfortunately, unbeknownst to me at the time, it's a challenge to have the sort of lab services that you need around it to be able to make it really functional and be able to set it up. But that's a great question. All right, with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful week. See, we ended up hitting 45 minutes anyway, even though I thought we were going to end a little early. Other questions, you can always post them here in the comments. You can always shoot us an email at managers@norwoodma.gov, and we'll continue to bring these lives every week with our COVID updates and other updates. So by all means, everyone, please stay safe out there, practice good social distancing, and there's supposed to be really good weather for the next few days, so please get out there and enjoy what outdoor dining is left and enjoy Central Street and the Common and any of our parks and trails and everything else. So I hope you all have a great week, and everyone take care.